Last night I dreamed that I had somehow ended up being a new member of this hapless group of individuals. They were all young men who had to fight each other to the death. I don't know if there were any spectators. I don't know if I wasn't asleep long enough to actually be engaged in one of these battles, so I don't know if we fought in some sort of arena with a bunch of spectators looking on, or if these events were streamed over the web or televised or what. This seemed to take place in the distant future. I mean, this place looked like the interior of a spaceship from some movie set hundreds of years in the future. Just lots of buttons, some of them blinking, lots of metal. I don't know how, I felt like I'd been caught by somebody and just forced to do this. I don't believe my inclusion in this group of people. They were like gladiators, of course. I don't believe it was for any sort of infraction. I don't think it was for any kind of political activism or any law breaking. I think I just was caught and just tossed in with this group of young men. And the funny thing about this is I remember not being fearful of my eventual death at the hands of one of these other guys. I just remember being so resigned to my fate and so cynical about the whole thing. I just remember feeling like, of course this is how my pathetic life ends, in a big violent spectacle for the amusement of strangers. Of course. How else could my life end? That's how I was that's how I was viewing the whole thing. And when I was first tossed into this large room where all of these guys were housed before one of these violent showdowns, a few of them, who must have been particularly efficient killers, a few of them who had been in this group for a long time, they'd survived several showdowns and now kind of felt like they were just the leaders of this group of futuristic gladiators or whatever. They kind of tried to give me, some crap. I remember I was seated in what looked like a voting booth. I don't know, I think I was looking at some sheet of paper. Maybe it was a breakdown of the rules or something, and three of them kind of moseyed up to me. One of them bumped my shoulder, the one that was standing in the center. He was the shortest of the three, but he was the one that was doing all the talking, and he kind of tried to condescend me like he was a senior and I was a freshman coming into high school. And I just remember just shutting this guy down. I mean, he was surprised by how, because I didn't care. I mean, I figured, okay, well, maybe I can just get these guys to jump, and then, I'll just get killed now instead of delaying the inevitable, and I'll take a few of these idiots with me. So I was running this guy down, just insulting him to no end. I mean, he really looked embarrassed in front of his two cohorts, and after that, nobody else in the room really spoke to me. Just a couple of stares one would expect if you were like the fish in a prison or whatever. I do remember one guy tried to escape from this group, and we were all forced to watch what happened to him, his punishment for this attempted escape. We watched this through like a vent that had been opened in this big metallic room we were being housed in, and the group was I don't know if we were just like wrangled by this big thing, or if this thing was just put in charge of all of us by some higher authority. But this gigantic, disgusting, intimidating monster, it kind of, when I saw it, I thought of Super Shredder from the end of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Just like 8 or 9 feet tall, really broad shoulders, and his face was covered in some kind of a mask. And he entered this room. We're all watching through the vents, to see what's going to happen to this poor dude who tried to get out of our group. He's strapped down to a table, and of course he looks just frightened out of his mind. This thing walks in, says something to him in a very deep voice, like, I couldn't really make out what it was saying to him, and it leaned over this poor guy, and then these, God, how could I describe these? They were like, they looked like jellyfish. It was like a whole grid of jellyfish kind of just oozed from each of his chest muscles, from his pecs, when he leaned over this table that this poor kid was strapped down to. And except they looked like, how jellyfish look deflated when they wash ashore? These were long, thin, droopy, wiggly, flabby, deflated jellyfish-looking things, except they were glowing a neon green. And there was, like I said, there was 2 square grids of these things just oozing out of his pectoralis major muscles. And when this thing leaned over the table, he wiggled these jellyfish-like glowing protrusions over the kid's face, and then dropped them on the kid's eyeballs, and the kid screamed bloody murder like he was being burned by them. He did this for about a minute and a half, and then kind of he jerked back and and then walked away and left that chamber, and then the vents closed, and we were all left to think about what we had just witnessed. And I remember looking at the kid's eyes, though, after he'd pulled the glowing jellyfish-like things off of them, and I expected his eyes to be burned out, or for there to be holes where where his eyes originally were nestled in their sockets, but there weren't. It didn't look like it did anything to him. I didn't even see any redness around his eyes, and I thought about it for a minute. It's like, wow, maybe the kid was just that grossed out. Maybe it wasn't a scream of pain. Maybe it was a scream of just, he was just so incredibly disgusted by what was happening. And yeah, I woke up just as I was told who my opponent was, and I was told that I had to, you weren't just put in front of your opponent, you had to enter this, it was sort of like in the Running Man, you had to enter this quadrant and go through a maze and eventually try to, you had to try and find your opponent and get the drop on him. And yeah, just as I was told who my opponent was, I don't remember his name, that's when I woke up.